Okay, well, my research project was entitled Exploring Approaches to Supporting Adults to Develop Basic IT Skills, or ICT Skills. That's ended up as the subtitle because it turned out to be all about video in the end, although I didn't know that when I started. I started with a problem that a lot of adults coming forward for help developing IT skills, whether that was in sort of beginners IT courses or a drop-in that I run, they also had difficulties with literacy. Some of them were ESOL students, overseas students, difficulties with English language. They had difficulties following written handouts. So I felt that however many hours I slaved trying to make my handouts as simple as possible, illustrating them as much as possible, some of them still had great difficulty actually using them independently. So I wanted a way of helping them when I wasn't there. So I could demonstrate, I could give them live demonstrations in the classroom, but then they'd go away and perhaps not be able to revise and practice the same ICT procedures on their own if there was no one to show them. They had no means of reminding themselves what to do. So that was the problem, and one of the possible solutions, I thought, would be to use video. Video is extremely popular for learning how to do things. In the last couple of weeks alone, YouTube has helped me learn to French plait my daughter's hair and to replace a battery on a TomTom sat-nav. And it didn't occur to me to look for written instructions for it because I wanted to see someone doing it. And I think with ICT it's often the same, especially as people often lack the specific vocabulary. You know, tell them to place their cursor here, they don't know what the cursor is, or to click on this, but they don't know where to look on the screen. So video seems suitable. And I have learners bringing their own devices, working on their own laptops or tablets, as well as using machines in the places where I work. And I never work in the same place on 2 days of the week. I work out in the community in different venues. And that makes it very difficult for me to create resources that actually match what the learners are going to see on their screen. Theirs are going to differ slightly, and that's going to add confusion. So I thought that if they created their own mobile videos, their own video tutorials by using mobile devices, then we could create the tutorials based on what they're actually seeing and doing on their own screens, rather than what I kind of hoped they would be seeing on, that may differ from my screen. It was a nightmare. At some point I called Anne-Marie and said, come, I need some help, it's all falling apart, it's not working. We hit various problems. There was a lot of resistance to the idea of getting out your mobile phones or borrowing a tablet. I used the project funding to make sure that we could provide tablets to people who didn't have a mobile. There was a lot of resistance to actually doing it. What I thought was quite a simple and fun thing, where I thought that people would say, oh, well, let's give it a go, where's the harm? One thing at a time relates to people who actually lacked skills in using their mobile phone or who didn't have access to mobile technology, who felt, well, I've come here to learn a computer, let me get to grips with that first before you try and show me how to use something else. So there's this perception that it wouldn't actually be easy to do, and they didn't want to be overloaded with another technical thing to learn. Or I'll get there in the end. These were people who actually, probably people who had slightly higher levels of literacy than some learners, who were making their own notes, but then failing to follow their own instructions effectively when they looked at them again, maybe because of lack of vocabulary. Sometimes I noticed also that when we talked about why they were having difficulties following their own notes, that was actually quite effective for improving their learning, picking apart where they were falling down. So it was worthwhile, but they didn't want to make videos. And then the final one there, that was actually a colleague who was very up for it at first, and in fact all the students in her class had mobile phones and were up for giving it a try. But then, as we just started to discuss the ideas, she started to really worry about the risks, the implications of somebody videoing something, and there may be somebody else in the room who's saying something, and it gets picked up on their video, and then it's on their phone for them to do whatever they like with. So the more mobile savvy people were not necessarily the ones who agreed to do it, because they were more aware of potential problems. The few people who did go ahead and try it out with me came across practical problems, Camera shape was not too much of a problem with mobile phones. It was, I think, the heavier and bigger the device got, the more of a problem that was. So with a small tablet, it wasn't too bad. With a heavy one, it was worse. But it was something that we hadn't really anticipated. I've heard of colleagues using mobile video in other contexts, construction lecturers getting the students to whip out their phones to video, some aspect of bricklaying or something. But maybe it's because we need to be quite close and have quite a sharp image of what's happening on the screen that camera shape did cause a problem for us. Background noise was a problem. My idea was that we would make use of spontaneously arising opportunities where people are often working on different things in the class. Someone would ask how to do something, we'd whip out the camera and video it as I'm explaining it. But of course then with the other people working on different things, a lot of that was picked up. I think that would have made a very unprofessional video tutorial, but not unusable. So often if you're aiming just for something for one learner to use for their own purposes, you could ignore the background noise. But it also links back to the issue of whether people's voices were being picked up who had not given permission, who were not involved in making the videos and might not want their voices to feature on someone else's videos. It was an issue. And storing and retrieving video clips was something else that I hadn't anticipated. On my mobile phone, I take video clips quite often, and to view one or to show one to you, I'll just scroll through them, click on the thumbnail. A lot of you probably do it. It's easy. But when a number of those clips all start with an image of a computer screen, and maybe several of them with the same piece of software open, it's very hard to distinguish between them. So as soon as a learner had 3 or 4 clips on their device, they were going, oh, which one is it? Nope, not that one. Which one is it? So we needed to explore solutions to that, and I'm not sure that we found the ideal one, but more about that on the report if you're interested. So, was it worth it? I decided to reconsider why I wasn't using existing online videos, seeing as I do use YouTube to teach myself various things, and because I know that they are popular with some of the learners that I was working with, particularly some of the ESOL learners reported using YouTube to learn recipes, cooking ideas and things. The thing is with a lot of the videos that are freely available online is they can be very hard to access if you have literacy difficulties or language difficulties. This is a really good site with some lovely, clear video tutorials for anyone who is teaching ICT, and goes into quite a lot of things that I couldn't teach them. So this is pretty good for extending more able learners. I had to think about ways of helping some of my learners access online videos, perhaps by emailing them a direct link to the clip that was going to be useful to them if they were learning specific things, because searching YouTube or navigating a site like this, which has several layers, it's got a menu on the left and you click on one there and you get another menu, you click on one there and there's actually a third layer which you can't see on my image. So that was beyond a lot of them, and they didn't necessarily know the vocabulary for finding what they wanted. So quite good for extending, but I still felt it was worth persisting for some of my low-level learners with making our own. And obviously they had more to gain from it because these were the learners who were least able to access books or other written instructions. One of the other reasons why I wanted to persist for them was that a lot of what's online is going to differ slightly from what they see. And I think that the screenshot from Google illustrates it. When, I don't know how many of you realise, I didn't really realise until I tried to teach it, how much the search results screen varies from computer to computer and person to person when you do the same search. So if you search, a lot of my learners are job seekers and they need to get into the Universal Job Match website. Some of them come armed with a written handout, and I'm not sure who it came from, and I wouldn't want to sort of name and shame anyway, but it tells them to enter the word job search into Google and then to click on the first result. Well, my first result on this screen is an advert. If I do it on my tablet, which knows me and has learned that I don't click on adverts, it is actually the first result, but it isn't for everybody. So, there's all sorts of examples like that I could name. I looked at using screen capture software as well. This website, the video tutorials are all created using screen capture software. So there's no camera shake. It's beautifully clear, very professional looking. But with screen capture, I can't show them where the control key is. So if they're at a very basic level, I found it was actually quite useful to be able to use an external camera to be able to show them the keyboard or something else. Oh, and the other point that I've missed out is that some of them want help with very specific procedures, which we simply couldn't find online, so logging into a particular system or something. So I concluded that if I'm to take this forward, it might be a job for tutors rather than learners. It's easier for me to perhaps send the class away, and after they've gone, to use one of the machines that they're working on to quickly create a video of something that came up that someone might want to revise. I can control background noise then, they're not there anymore. I've actually bought what somebody called a selfie stick on steroids, which is a tablet mount. It's like an angle poise lamp, and you set it up, and then there's no camera shake because it sits in front of the screen. And it looks a bit intrusive here, but actually I can see the screen and forget that's there and do something on it. I don't know, I've put a question mark next to the other things. Is it quicker than making printed handouts? I was spending a lot of time trying to simplify and illustrate instruction handouts. You could spend a lot of time editing your videos, making them perfect, taking and retaking when you slip up. But I think if you're aiming for usable rather than professional, it's probably quicker. But it does depend on your purpose. More useful. Possibly, I think definitely for some learners, but I've worked with a very small sample. So, and a question mark about sharing clips. A couple of the tutors who were very keen to work with me at the beginning, and then changed their minds when we talked about the possible problems and risks. They got very excited at the beginning about the idea of creating resources that we could share. Initially, I had thought this is a personal learning thing. This is personalising the learning. This is something the learner has on their own device only. And it's videoed on their screen and it's relevant to them. There's obviously potential benefits in sharing, but there's also a whole load of issues around intellectual property and even permissions to film in certain locations. The one learner who took this idea beyond my classroom walls and went into a public library and asked for help using the computer and got permission from the person who demonstrated to him to film it, explained to her that I can't read, I can't write myself notes. Can I just film the screen while you explain this to me? And she thought that was fine, and the head librarian came over and asked them to stop. So, things that you don't think of necessarily in your training room because you've got permission to do this as part of your research project. Things to bear in mind. So I don't think I've refined the technique, but I still think there's potential. And I'd like to invite comments as much as questions. If you don't have questions, how about reactions, responses, suggestions? Because I feel like I've only just begun with this, it's not finished. Hi.
I did it always. I was doing the same kind of thing. I work with dyslexic learners and they forget. So it was a question of trying to use their mobile phone. I had the same idea as you, mobile phone in the pocket, and I thought they could actually make the clips themselves. And it would be useful too. I found lots of them didn't want to. It was like, oh, we don't want to do that. But the ones who did actually found it quite fun.
What were they learning? What sort of things were you asking them to video?
I had one who was doing an HE course and she was suffering from dyscalculia, so she wanted to take lots and lots of different clips of how to do different statistics tests. I had one who was doing level 3 performing arts, so she loved the idea of being on the camera. And I had one who was doing entry level, she was doing entry level hair design, but with me she was doing, we were doing English skills. With the other two I was doing math skills. But I thought it was very useful actually for math skills for them to be able to just capture.
It's interesting that you also found that they didn't want to, because I thought I had a whole class, just before the research project started, or at least before I got my act together properly, I was working with a group of young mums, and I saw them every break time, I saw them sharing videos on their phones, I knew that they did that, and I thought they would respond to it really well, but that class had finished, the course had finished, and they'd moved on by the time I really got this together, and a lot of my learners were job seekers and older people, and they tended not to have the mobile phone skills. They were not only beginner users of computers, but they weren't confident at using mobile technology. So I wondered if, I actually almost didn't go ahead with it because I didn't have enough of the learners who I felt should engage, as you thought with yours. Interesting. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have the same view as to whether it's going to be, people assume that it would be me doing the explaining, but I wanted actually the students to do the explaining so that I could check that they understood what we got through in the lesson.
Yeah.
Because did you start with...
I envisaged that I would explain something because it would be new to them, that it wouldn't be a check of what they've previously been exposed to in some way, that it would be whenever someone says, oh, how do I do this, that as I explained, I have a slight problem with the idea of doing it as I explained it, because then they're probably focusing on their phone and not actually listening or watching. But then they've got it with them. So sometimes we worked in a 3, and if there was someone else who could hold the phone and the learner could actually listen to me, I was the one explaining, or another expert, a volunteer or a peer who knew how to do it. But
Can I say a very quick comment? I was fortunate to work with both James and Jo, and I don't think Jo's quite shared just the diversity of challenge she had. She had such a diversity of learners in such a diversity of settings, and you were going from different places and all sorts of things, and different, obviously, technology that they were all using. I think that was a huge mix of things to take into, and obviously, as you know, some of them were unable to read at all, and there was a whole diversity of things that I think were much bigger challenges than perhaps, she's sharing, because it was a really quite a tough thing to get all these things together. And with James, just to say, if you do get the chance to have a look at the Weebly he's produced, because there's lots of videos and lots of things in there that I think you'll get a real feel for what they've learned is all about. So I was very fortunate to work with them both. It's really excellent.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.